Elena Russo thought the worst night of her life was when her husband threw her out like garbage, calling her broken and worthless because she couldn't give him children. She was wrong. The worst night was when bullets started flying in a dark Chicago alley, and the most dangerous man in the city stepped between her and death. Matteo Romano, feared Mafia boss, killer protector, saved her life with one condition. She belonged to him now. But when his 7-year-old niece whispered, "I love you," and Elena's heart shattered completely, she realized she wasn't just hiding from her husband's enemies anymore. She was falling for a man whose world could destroy everything she'd started to love, including an innocent child who'd already lost too much. What Elena doesn't know yet is that her husband's betrayal was just the beginning, and the real danger is about to walk through Matteo's front door wearing a familiar face. Subscribe and tell me where you're watching from, because this story is about to prove that sometimes the people who save you are the most dangerous of all. The rain drummed against the diner windows like angry fingers. Elena Russo wiped down the same table for the third time, her hands shaking from exhaustion. The clock above the coffee machine showed 11:47 p.m. Another double shift behind her. Another day of avoiding home. Her phone buzzed against her hip. A text from David, her husband of 3 years. "Come home. We need to talk." Elena's stomach dropped. Those 5 words never meant anything good. She tucked a strand of dark hair behind her ear and grabbed her worn purse from under the counter. "You heading out, hun?" called Marge, the night manager. Her voice carried the weight of too many years spent serving coffee to strangers. "Yeah, see you tomorrow." "Be safe out there. It's getting rough in this neighborhood." Elena pushed through the glass door into the cold Chicago night. The wind cut through her thin jacket like a blade. She pulled it tighter and hurried down the sidewalk, her sneakers splashing through puddles. Their apartment building stood like a tired giant against the dark sky. The elevator was broken again, so Elena climbed 3 flights of stairs. Each step felt heavier than the last. She found David sitting at their small kitchen table. A bottle of beer sat in front of him, already half empty. His face looked hard in the fluorescent light. "Sit down," he said without looking at her. Elena remained standing. "What's this about?" David finally met her eyes. What she saw there made her heart race. Anger, disgust, something that looked almost like hatred. "I've been thinking," he said, taking a long drink, "about us, about this marriage." "David, let me finish." His voice was sharp as broken glass. 3 years, Elena. 3 years of trying, 3 years of doctor visits and tests and hoping. Elena's hands found each other, fingers twisting together. She knew where this was going. The fear she'd been carrying for months settled in her chest like a cold stone. "The doctor was clear," David continued. "It's not me. It's you. You can't give me what I want." "We could try other options," Elena whispered. "There are treatments." "I don't want treatments. I want a wife who works, a wife who can give me children." He stood up, towering over her. "I want a real woman." The words hit her like a slap. Elena felt tears burning behind her eyes, but she wouldn't let them fall. Not in front of him. "So what are you saying?" David walked to the bedroom. She heard drawers opening, clothes being thrown around. He came back with a garbage bag stuffed full. "I'm saying I'm done wasting time on something broken." He dropped the bag at her feet. Elena stared at it, not understanding. "Your clothes?" he said. "Some of your stuff. The rest can stay. Consider it payment for 3 years of disappointment." The room started to spin. Elena gripped the back of a chair to steady herself. "You're kicking me out?" "I'm setting us both free. You can find someone who doesn't mind damaged goods. I'm finding someone who can actually be a wife." The cruelty in his voice cut deeper than any physical blow. Elena had known their marriage was struggling. She'd known the fertility issues were straining them both. But this was beyond anything she'd imagined. "Please," she heard herself say, "we can work through this. We can get out." David's voice was flat, final. "Right now, don't make this harder than it has to be." Elena looked around the apartment that had been her home for 3 years. The couch they'd bought together, the pictures on the wall, the coffee mug she'd left in the sink that morning, expecting to come home and wash it. "Where am I supposed to go?" David shrugged. "That's not my problem anymore." Elena picked up the garbage bag with hands that felt disconnected from her body. It was heavier than it looked, her whole life reduced to whatever David thought was worth keeping. She walked to the door on unsteady legs. Her hand touched the handle, and she turned back one more time. "I loved you," she said. David was already opening another beer. He didn't look up. "I know. That's what made this so hard to watch." The door closed behind her with a soft click that sounded like thunder in her ears. Elena stood in the hallway for a long moment, staring at the number on the door. 3B. For 3 years, that had meant home. Now it meant nothing. She walked down the stairs slowly, the garbage bag bumping against her leg with each step. Outside, the rain had gotten worse. It soaked through her jacket in seconds. Elena started walking. She had nowhere to go, but standing still felt impossible. The bag grew heavier with each block. Her sneakers squelched through puddles. Water dripped from her hair into her eyes. The diner sat empty, except for Marge, counting the till. Elena knew she could knock, explain what happened. Marge would let her sleep in the break room, probably, but the thought of seeing pity in those tired eyes made her stomach turn. She kept walking. The Starlight Motel glowed pink and blue in the distance. Elena had passed it 1,000 times, never thinking she'd need it. The neon sign flickered. Daily rates available. $23 and change. That's what she had in her purse. Enough for one night, if the rate was cheap enough. After that, she couldn't think that far ahead. Elena adjusted her grip on the bag and crossed the street. Her reflection in a shop window stopped her cold. Soaked hair hanging in her face, jacket sticking to her thin frame, eyes wide with shock. She looked like exactly what she was, a woman with nowhere to go. Behind her, a car engine rumbled low. Elena glanced back and saw headlights approaching slowly. Too slowly. The car was following her pace, staying about 20 feet behind. Fear shot through her exhaustion. Elena walked faster. The headlights matched her speed. Her heart hammered against her ribs. The motel was still 3 blocks away. The street stretched empty in both directions. No other cars, no people walking. Elena ducked into an alley between 2 buildings. Maybe she could cut through, lose whoever was following her. The bag caught on a dumpster, and she yanked it free. Footsteps echoed behind her. Heavy boots on wet pavement. Elena ran. The alley opened onto another street. She burst out, gasping, and looked both ways. Empty. Completely empty. A black SUV screamed around the corner, tires spinning on the wet asphalt. Elena dove behind a parked car as the SUV skidded to a stop. Car doors slammed. Voices shouted over the rain. "Where is she?" "Check the alley. Boss wants this finished tonight." Elena pressed herself against the cold metal of the car. Her breath came in short gasps that sounded impossibly loud. The garbage bag lay a few feet away, forgotten. More footsteps, getting closer. A new voice cut through the chaos, deep, calm, carrying absolute authority. "That's enough." The footsteps stopped. Elena peered around the bumper. A tall man stood in the middle of the street. Even in the dim light, she could see his expensive coat, his confident posture. He looked like he owned the world. "Sir?" One of the other voices sounded uncertain now. "I said that's enough." The tall man's voice never rose, but somehow it filled the entire street. "Put your weapons away. Now." "But the target is under my protection." Elena's blood turned to ice. Target? Protection? What was happening? The tall man turned in her direction. Even across the distance, she felt his eyes find her. "Elena Russo," he said. Not a question. Somehow, impossibly, this stranger knew her name. Elena stood up slowly. Water ran from her hair down her face. Her whole body shook, but not just from the cold anymore. "Who are you?" The man took a step closer. In the streetlight, she could see his face clearly now. Dark hair, strong jaw, eyes that seemed to see everything. Someone who knew. "Your father," he said simply. Elena's father had died 5 years ago. Heart attack at 53. He'd been a good man who worked construction and taught her to change her own oil. "My father didn't know people like you," she said, surprised by the steadiness in her own voice. A small smile touched the corner of the man's mouth. "Your father was a smart man. He knew when to keep certain friendships quiet." Behind him, the other men stood like statues, waiting for orders. Elena counted 4 of them, all wearing dark clothes, all watching her with professional interest. "What do you want?" she asked. "To make sure you see tomorrow morning." He gestured to the SUV. "You need to come with me. It's not safe here." Elena almost laughed. Nothing about this was safe. Strange men with guns in the middle of the night. A man who seemed to command them with a word. Her name somehow known by people she'd never seen before. "I'm not going anywhere with you." The man studied her for a long moment. Rain ran down his coat, but he didn't seem to notice. "Your husband owes money to some very impatient people," he said finally. "They think hurting you will encourage him to pay faster." Elena's knees nearly buckled. "David, what kind of money?" "The kind that gets people killed when it's not paid back." Another car appeared at the end of the street. This one moved fast, no headlights. Elena heard the man curse under his breath. "Get down!" The world exploded into noise. Glass shattered. Metal sparked. Elena hit the pavement hard, her palms scraping against concrete. The tall man was suddenly beside her, his body covering hers. She could smell his cologne mixed with gunpowder and rain. "Stay down," he said against her ear. The shooting stopped as quickly as it started. Elena heard car doors slam, tires squeal, then silence except for the rain. The man helped her sit up. His hands were gentle but strong. "Are you hurt?" Elena shook her head. She couldn't find her voice. "Good." He stood and offered his hand. "Now will you come with me?" Elena looked at the broken glass scattered across the street, at the bullet holes in the car she'd been hiding behind, at this stranger who had somehow kept her alive. "Who are you?" she asked again. This time, he answered, "Matteo Romano." Elena knew that name, not from her father, but from whispered conversations at the diner, from news reports that never quite told the whole story, from the kind of reputation that made people cross themselves when they heard it. Yes, he was still holding out his hand. "And right now, I'm the only thing standing between you and a very unpleasant death." Elena stared at his outstretched fingers. Everything in her life had fallen apart in the span of 3 hours. Her marriage, her home, her safety, her future. Maybe trusting a dangerous man was just one more bad decision, but staying here definitely meant dying. She took his hand. Matteo helped her to her feet with surprising gentleness. His touch was warm against her cold skin. "My bag," she said, looking around. One of his men already held it. Elena noticed he was careful not to let it drag on the wet ground. "The motel isn't safe." Matteo guided her toward the black SUV. "Nowhere is safe right now except with me." Elena stopped walking. "I can't. I won't trade one man's control for another's." Matteo's eyes softened slightly. "I'm not your husband, Elena. I don't want to own you. I just want to keep you alive." The sincerity in his voice surprised her. Elena had expected smooth words, practiced lies. Instead, she heard something that sounded almost like honesty. "For how long?" "Until it's safe for you to choose something else." Elena looked back at the street, at the broken glass and bullet holes, at the evidence of violence that had found her despite every attempt to live quietly. "Okay," she whispered. "One night." Matteo nodded. "One night." The SUV was warm inside, all leather and soft lighting. Elena sank into the passenger seat and closed her eyes. Her whole body ached with exhaustion and shock. "There's water in the door pocket," Matteo said as they pulled away from the curb. "And a blanket behind your seat." Elena found both. The water was cold and perfect. The blanket was soft and smelled like expensive detergent. "Why?" she asked as they drove through the empty streets. "Why what?" "Why help me? You don't know me." Matteo was quiet for so long, Elena thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely audible over the engine. "Because I know what it's like to lose everything in one night." Elena turned to look at his profile in the dashboard light. Strong features, a jaw that looked like it never relaxed, but something in his expression was soft, sad. "What did you lose?" "Everything that mattered." The SUV turned through tall iron gates. Elena saw a mansion rising out of the darkness, all windows and elegant lines. Security lights illuminated manicured grounds. "This is where you live?" "This is where you'll be safe." The car stopped in front of massive wooden doors. Elena stared up at the house, counting windows. It was bigger than the entire building where she'd lived with David. "I don't belong here," she said. Matteo turned off the engine and looked at her. "Tonight, you belong wherever you need to be alive." One of his men opened her door. Elena stepped out onto smooth stone pavers. Everything was quiet except for the rain pattering against leaves. "Elena," Matteo's voice made her turn around. "What happened tonight? It's not your fault." Something in her chest loosened slightly. For the first time since David had dropped that garbage bag at her feet, Elena felt like she could breathe. "Thank you," she said. Matteo nodded and walked toward the doors. Elena followed, her wet sneakers silent on the stone. Behind them, the iron gate swung closed with a soft clang. Elena was safe. For now. But looking up at the mansion looming above her, she couldn't shake the feeling that safety might come with its own price. The massive wooden doors opened before they reached them. A woman in her 60s appeared, her silver hair pulled back in a neat bun. She wore a simple black dress and a concerned expression. "Mr. Romano," she said with a slight accent Elena couldn't place. "You're home late." "Mrs. Donati, this is Elena. She'll be staying in the blue room tonight." Mrs. Donati's eyes took in Elena's soaked clothes and exhausted face. Her expression softened immediately. "Of course. Come, dear. Let's get you warm and dry." Elena hesitated. "I don't want to be any trouble." "No trouble at all." Mrs. Donati's voice was gentle but firm. "Mr. Romano, I'll bring her something to eat after she's settled." Matteo nodded. "Thank you. Elena, Mrs. Donati takes care of the house. If you need anything, ask her." He started to walk away, then turned back. "The house is secure. You don't need to lock your door." Elena wasn't sure if that was meant to be comforting or threatening. Mrs. Donati led her through a foyer that could have held Elena's entire apartment. A chandelier hung from the ceiling like captured stars. The floors were marble, polished to a mirror shine. "Don't worry about dripping," Mrs. Donati said, noticing Elena's hesitation. "These floors have seen much worse than rainwater." They climbed a curved staircase to the second floor. The hallway was lined with paintings Elena suspected were originals. "Here we are." Mrs. Donati opened a door to reveal a bedroom larger than Elena's old living room. The walls were painted a soft blue-gray. A 4-poster bed dominated the space, made up with white linens that looked impossibly clean. "There are towels in the bathroom, and I've put some clothes in the wardrobe that should fit you. Dinner will be ready in 20 minutes. Elena stared at the room. "I can't. This is too much." Mrs. Donati turned back from the doorway. "Child, when was the last time you ate?" Elena tried to remember. The diner? She'd grabbed a stale donut around 3 in the afternoon. Her stomach chose that moment to growl loudly. "I thought so. 20 minutes. Mrs. Donati's voice brooked no argument. "Don't make me come looking for you." The door closed with a soft click, leaving Elena alone in luxury she'd only seen in magazines. She set her garbage bag on a chair that probably cost more than her car. The contrast was almost funny. Almost. The bathroom was all white marble and gold fixtures. Towels thick enough to live in hung from heated racks. Elena caught sight of herself in the mirror and winced. Her hair hung in wet tangles. Her makeup had run in dark circles under her eyes. She looked like she'd been hit by a truck. Maybe she had been. Elena stripped off her wet clothes and wrapped herself in a towel that felt like a cloud. In the wardrobe, she found jeans that fit perfectly and a soft sweater in deep green. Both had tags still attached. She ran a brush through her hair and washed her face with soap that smelled like lavender. When she was done, she looked almost human again. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. "Come in," she called. Mrs. Donati entered carrying a tray that made Elena's mouth water. Soup that smelled like home. Fresh bread. A mug of tea that steamed in the cool air. "I thought you might prefer to eat in your room tonight," Mrs. Donati said, setting the tray on a small table by the window. "You've had enough excitement for one evening." Elena sat down and took a spoonful of soup. It was perfect, warm and rich and everything she needed. "Mrs. Donati, how long have you worked here?" 15 years. Come Christmas." "Is he—" Elena struggled to find the right words. "Is Mr. Romano a good employer?" Mrs. Donati sat in the chair across from her. Her expression was thoughtful. "Mr. Romano has seen too much loss for a man his age. It's made him hard on the outside. But a good man doesn't employ someone like me for 15 years if he doesn't have kindness in his heart." "What kind of loss?" Mrs. Donati was quiet for a moment. "That's his story to tell, if he chooses. But I will say this. You're safe here. Truly safe. Whatever brought you to our door tonight, it won't reach you in this house." Elena finished the soup and felt warmth spreading through her chest. For the first time in hours, her hands weren't shaking. "Thank you," she said, "for the clothes, the food, everything. Rest now. Tomorrow will bring its own challenges." Mrs. Donati collected the empty dishes and paused at the door. "Elena, he may seem frightening, but Mr. Romano doesn't help people lightly. If he's protecting you, there's a good reason." After she left, Elena sat by the window looking out at the grounds. Security lights illuminated gardens that probably looked beautiful in daylight. She could see the outline of the gates in the distance. Was she a guest here or a prisoner? Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Sleep well." You're safe now. Elena stared at the message. Matteo. Somehow, even though it was just words on a screen, she felt the truth in them. She was safe. For the first time in years, maybe. Elena changed into pajamas she found in the dresser. Silk things that felt like water against her skin, and climbed into the enormous bed. The mattress was perfectly firm, the pillows perfectly soft. Outside, rain continued to fall against the windows. Inside, Elena was warm and fed and protected. It should have been enough to let her sleep. But as she lay in the darkness, questions circled through her mind like sharks. Who was Matteo Romano, really? What had happened to the family Mrs. Donati mentioned? Why did David owe money to dangerous people? And most importantly, what happened tomorrow? Elena pulled the soft blankets up to her chin and closed her eyes. Whatever came next, she'd face it. She'd survived David's betrayal, the shooting, the terrifying ride through Chicago's dark streets. She could survive whatever tomorrow brought. But as sleep finally took her, Elena couldn't shake the feeling that her life had changed forever in the span of one night. And she wasn't sure if that was a blessing or a curse. Somewhere in the house, footsteps moved through hallways she hadn't seen yet. A door closed softly. Security systems engaged with quiet beeps. Elena was safe, protected, cared for by strangers who had no reason to help her. It was more than she'd had 12 hours ago. It would have to be enough. Elena woke to sunlight streaming through windows she didn't recognize. For a moment she lay still, trying to remember where she was. Then it all came flooding back. David's cruelty, the shooting, Matteo Romano's protective presence. She sat up in the enormous bed, her body aching from yesterday's stress. The clock on the nightstand read 9:17 a.m. She'd slept for almost 10 hours. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. "Come in," she called, pulling the blanket up to her chest. Mrs. Donati entered with another tray, this one loaded with coffee, fresh fruit, and what looked like homemade pastries. "Good morning, dear. I thought you might be hungry." Elena's stomach responded with an embarrassing growl. "You don't have to keep feeding me." "Nonsense. A person can't think clearly on an empty stomach." Mrs. Donati set the tray down and poured coffee from a silver pot. "Mr. Romano would like to speak with you when you're ready, but there's no rush." Elena accepted the coffee gratefully. It was perfect, strong and hot with just a hint of cream. "Where is he?" "In his office, down the hall, last door on the right. But eat first." After Mrs. Donati left, Elena showered and dressed in fresh clothes from the wardrobe. Everything fit perfectly, which should have been comforting, but somehow felt unsettling instead. How did Matteo know her size? She found his office easily enough. The door was heavy wood, partially open. She could hear him talking, his voice low and controlled. "I don't care what it costs," he was saying. "Double the security around the perimeter. And I want someone watching David Russo every minute of every day." Elena's blood turned cold. He was talking about her husband. "Sir, if I may suggest, killing him would solve the problem permanently." "No." Matteo's voice turned sharp. "He's not worth the complications. Just watch him." Elena knocked before she could lose her nerve. "Come in." Matteo sat behind a desk that looked like it belonged in a museum. He wore a dark suit that probably cost more than Elena made in 3 months. When he looked up, his expression softened slightly. "Elena, how did you sleep?" "Fine, thank you." She stayed near the door, suddenly uncertain. "I heard you talking about David." Matteo gestured to a chair across from his desk. "Sit, please." Elena perched on the edge of the chair, her back straight. "Your husband borrowed $50,000 from some very unpleasant people," Matteo said without preamble. The kind who collect debts with baseball bats and car bombs. Elena's hands clenched in her lap. 50,000. For what? Gambling. Bad investments. Does it matter? Matteo leaned back in his chair. What matters is that he put you in danger to cover his own stupidity. But I'm not married to him anymore. Not really. They don't know that. And even if they did, they'd still use you to hurt him. It's how men like that think. Elena felt tears threatening and blinked them back. How long? How long what? How long before it's safe for me to leave? Matteo was quiet for a long moment, studying her face. A few days, maybe a week. My people are working on it. And then what? I can't go back to my apartment? David probably changed the locks anyway. Elena laughed bitterly. I don't even have a job anymore. I can't exactly show up for my shift after disappearing yesterday. You'll figure it out. The casual dismissal stung. Elena stood up quickly. Right. Well, thank you for your hospitality, but I should probably start figuring it out now. She made it 3 steps toward the door before Matteo's voice stopped her. Where will you go? Elena turned around. That's not your problem. Answer the question. Something in his tone made her chest tighten. Not threatening exactly, but absolutely unwilling to be ignored. I don't know, she admitted. A shelter, maybe? I have some money saved. Sit down. I'm fine standing. Elena. The way he said her name made her look at him directly. His dark eyes were intense but not unkind. Sit down. This time she obeyed. Matteo came around the desk and leaned against it, crossing his arms. You can't leave. Not yet. You said a few days. I said my people were working on it. I didn't say they'd found a solution. Elena felt trapped suddenly, like the walls were closing in. So what am I? A prisoner? You're a guest who's in danger. What's the difference? Matteo's jaw tightened. The difference is that I'm trying to keep you alive, not control you. By keeping me locked in your house? By keeping you away from people who want to hurt you. His voice rose slightly, the first crack in his controlled facade. Do you have any idea what these men do to women who can't pay their husbands' debts? Elena's stomach clenched, but she forced herself to meet his gaze. Tell me. No. Why not? Because once you know, you can't unknow, and you don't need that in your head. The kindness in his refusal surprised her. Elena had expected graphic details meant to scare her into compliance. Instead, Matteo was protecting her from knowledge that would hurt her. I need air, she said suddenly. Can I go outside? The gardens are safe. Stay within sight of the house. Elena nodded and headed for the door. Elena? She looked back. I know this is hard, but it's temporary. How do you know? Because I don't leave loose ends. The words should have sounded threatening. Instead, they sounded like a promise. Elena found her way to the back of the house, where French doors opened onto a stone terrace. The gardens beyond were beautiful. Carefully tended beds of flowers she couldn't name, perfectly trimmed hedges, gravel paths that curved between ornamental trees. She walked slowly, breathing in the cool morning air. After yesterday's rain, everything smelled fresh and clean. Birds chirped in the branches overhead. It was peaceful, almost normal. Elena found a bench beside a small fountain and sat down. The water made soft splashing sounds that should have been soothing. Instead, she felt restless. How had her life become this? 24 hours ago, she'd been a married woman with a job and an apartment. Now she was hiding in a crime boss's mansion, dependent on the kindness of strangers. A small sound made her turn around. A little girl stood about 10 feet away, partially hidden behind a tree. She looked maybe 7 years old, with dark curls and enormous brown eyes. "Hi there," Elena said gently. The child didn't respond. She just stared with those huge eyes. "I'm Elena. What's your name?" Still nothing. The little girl took a step backward, like she might run. Elena stayed very still. "It's okay. I won't hurt you." The child tilted her head slightly, studying Elena's face. After a long moment, she stepped out from behind the tree. She wore a yellow dress and small white sneakers. In her arms, she clutched a stuffed rabbit that had seen better days. "That's a nice bunny," Elena said. The little girl looked down at the toy, then back at Elena. Slowly, she walked closer. When she was about 3 feet away, she stopped. Elena waited. Something about the child's silence felt different from shyness. Deeper, more careful. The little girl reached into her pocket and pulled out a piece of paper. She held it out to Elena. Elena took it gently. It was a drawing, stick figures in crayon. A tall man, a smaller woman, and a tiny girl holding what looked like a rabbit. Above them, the child had drawn a house with windows and a door. "Did you draw this? It's beautiful." The little girl nodded, a tiny smile touching her lips. "Is this you?" Elena pointed to the small figure. Another nod. "And this is your daddy?" The smile disappeared. The child shook her head and pointed to the house, then to Elena. Elena looked at the drawing again. "This is your house? And this is me?" A vigorous nod. "Elena?" Both Elena and the child turned toward the voice. Matteo stood on the terrace, his expression unreadable. "Uncle Matteo!" The little girl ran to him, throwing her arms around his legs. "Uncle." Elena felt something shift in her understanding of the man who'd saved her life. Matteo knelt down to the child's level. "Sophia, what did we say about bothering our guest?" Sophia shook her head and pointed to Elena, then to herself. "She wasn't bothering me," Elena said quickly. "We were just looking at her drawing." Matteo glanced at the paper in Elena's hand. His expression softened. "Sophia doesn't talk," he said quietly. Elena looked at the little girl who was watching her with those enormous eyes. "At all?" "Not since—" Matteo stopped himself. "Not for a while." Sophia tugged on his sleeve and gestured toward Elena. "What is it, sweetheart?" Sophia ran back to Elena and took her hand, pulling gently. "I think she wants me to come with her," Elena said. Matteo hesitated. "Sophia, Elena might be busy." "I'm not busy," Elena said. She looked down at the little girl's hopeful face. "Where do you want to show me?" Sophia led them both across the garden to a small gazebo surrounded by rose bushes. Inside, she had set up what looked like a tea party. Stuffed animals sat around a child-sized table with plastic cups and plates. Sophia gestured for Elena to sit on one of the tiny chairs. Elena folded herself down carefully, her knees nearly touching her chin. Sophia poured pretend tea with serious concentration, then offered Elena a plastic cookie. "Thank you," Elena said solemnly. "This is delicious." Sophia beamed and clapped her hands silently. Matteo stood at the entrance to the gazebo watching. Elena caught him smiling, really smiling, for the first time since she'd met him. "Does she do this often? Have tea parties?" "Not with anyone real," he said softly. "Usually just her animals." Sophia served Matteo next, standing on her toes to reach his hand with the cup. He accepted it gravely and took a pretend sip. "Excellent tea, Sophia, just like Mama used to make." The little girl's face lit up. She ran to a corner of the gazebo and came back with a photo album. She opened it carefully and showed Elena a picture of a beautiful woman with Sophia's dark curls. "My Mama," Sophia whispered. Elena's breath caught. The child's voice was barely audible, rusty from disuse but clear. Matteo went very still. "She was beautiful," Elena said gently. "You look just like her." Sophia nodded and turned the page. More pictures. The woman holding baby Sophia, the woman and Matteo standing together, all three of them at what looked like a birthday party. "What happened to her?" Elena asked quietly. Sophia's smile faded. She closed the album and hugged it to her chest. "Car accident," Matteo said. His voice was carefully controlled. 2 years ago, Sophia was in the car. Elena's heart broke for both of them. She looked at the little girl who was staring at the ground. "Sophia?" Elena waited until the child looked up. "I'm very sorry about your mama, but I'm glad you're okay." Sophia nodded solemnly. Then she did something unexpected. She walked over and hugged Elena around the waist. Elena felt tears prick her eyes. She hugged the little girl back, breathing in the scent of her shampoo and the faint smell of crayons. When Sophia pulled away, she was smiling again. She pointed to Elena, then to the tea set, then made a gesture Elena didn't understand. "She wants to know if you'll come back tomorrow," Matteo translated. Elena looked at him, then back at Sophia's hopeful face. "If your uncle says it's okay." Sophia spun around to face Matteo, her hands clasped in front of her. "We'll see," he said. Sophia's face fell slightly. "That's not a no," Elena said quickly. "That's an, I need to think about it, right?" Matteo nodded. "Right." Sophia seemed satisfied with this answer. She began cleaning up the tea party with the same serious concentration she'd used to set it up. Elena helped, stacking the tiny cups carefully. "She's wonderful." "She is." Matteo's voice was thick with emotion. "She's been through too much for someone so young." "What about her parents? I mean, her father?" "My brother. He died in the same accident." Elena's chest tightened. "I'm so sorry." "Sophia is all I have left of them." Watching him with the little girl, Elena began to understand something about Matteo Romano that newspaper articles would never capture. Yes, he was dangerous. Yes, he lived in a world of violence and control, but he was also a man trying to raise his dead brother's child with tenderness and love. Sophia finished packing up her toys and ran to Elena for another hug. "Tomorrow," she whispered. Elena looked at Matteo over the child's head. He gave an almost imperceptible nod. "Tomorrow," Elena promised. Sophia clapped her hands and ran toward the house, her rabbit trailing behind her. Elena and Matteo walked back more slowly, not speaking. The silence wasn't uncomfortable. It was the quiet of two people processing what they'd witnessed. "She talked," Matteo said finally. "Does she do that often?" "First time in 6 months." Elena stopped walking. "Really?" Matteo nodded. The therapist said it might happen gradually, that she'd start talking when she felt safe enough. "And she feels safe with me?" "Apparently." Elena wasn't sure how to process this information. A traumatized child finding comfort in her presence should have felt like a gift. Instead, it felt like a responsibility she wasn't sure she could handle. "Matteo, I know what you're thinking," he interrupted, "that this complicates things. That staying here gets harder when a 7-year-old gets attached to you." Elena nodded. That was exactly what she was thinking. "But here's what I'm thinking," Matteo continued. "Sophia hasn't connected with anyone since her parents died. Not the therapists, not the tutors, not even Mrs. Donati completely. If you can help her heal even a little bit, then whatever complications arise are worth it." They reached the terrace. Elena turned to face him. "What if I can't? What if I make things worse?" "You won't." "How can you be so sure?" Matteo studied her face for a long moment. because you understand what it's like to lose everything in one night, and you understand what it's like to need someone to help put the pieces back together." His words hit harder than Elena expected. She felt tears threatening again. "I should go inside," she said. "Elena." Matteo's voice stopped her at the door. "Thank you for being kind to her." Elena nodded and escaped into the house before the tears could fall. She found herself back in the blue bedroom, staring out the window at the gardens where she'd just experienced something unexpectedly beautiful. A lonely child finding her voice, a guarded man showing tenderness, a moment of connection in the middle of chaos. Elena sat on the edge of the bed and finally let herself cry. Not just for Sophia and her lost parents, or for Matteo and his grief. She cried for herself, for the woman who'd been thrown away like garbage, who'd been shot at by strangers, who'd found refuge in the last place she'd ever expected. She cried because, for the first time in years, she felt like she mattered to someone, even if that someone was a 7-year-old girl who'd lost everything too. When the tears stopped, Elena felt hollow, but somehow cleaner. She washed her face and went downstairs to find Mrs. Donati. "Is there anything I can help with?" she asked. "Cleaning, cooking, anything?" Mrs. Donati looked surprised. "You're a guest, dear." "I need to do something useful, please." Mrs. Donati studied her face, then nodded. The kitchen could use an extra pair of hands for lunch preparation. Elena spent the next 2 hours chopping vegetables and learning Mrs. Donati's methods for making pasta from scratch. The work was simple and mindless, exactly what she needed. "You're good at this," Mrs. Donati observed, as Elena rolled pasta dough with surprising skill. "My grandmother taught me when I was little. She said cooking was love made visible." "Smart woman." Elena smiled sadly. "She was. I wish she could have met Sophia." "Why is that?" "She would have known exactly how to help her heal." Mrs. Donati paused in her stirring. "And what makes you think you don't?" Elena considered this. "I'm a mess myself. How can I help someone else?" Sometimes the people who understand pain the deepest are the best at recognizing it in others. Before Elena could respond, Sophia appeared in the kitchen doorway. She held up a piece of paper, another drawing. This one showed 2 women in a kitchen, surrounded by what looked like food. One woman was tall with dark hair, the other smaller with yellow curls. Sophia pointed to Elena, then to herself, then to the picture. "You want to help cook?" Elena asked. Sophia nodded enthusiastically. "Mrs. Donati, is it okay if—" "Of course." Mrs. Donati was already pulling a chair over to the counter. "Sophia can help with the sauce." They worked together in comfortable quiet, Sophia carefully stirring while Elena and Mrs. Donati finished the pasta. Every few minutes, Sophia would look up at Elena and smile. When Matteo appeared for lunch, he stopped in the doorway of the dining room, staring at the 3 of them setting the table together. "Something wrong?" Elena asked. "No," he said quietly. "Something very right." They ate together, the first real family meal Elena had experienced in years. Sophia chattered in whispers and gestures, showing Elena how to twirl pasta properly. Mrs. Donati told stories about her childhood in Italy. Matteo watched it all with something that looked almost like contentment. For a few hours, Elena forgot about David's betrayal, about the men who wanted to hurt her, about the uncertain future waiting outside the mansion's gates. For a few hours, she felt like she belonged somewhere. It was dangerous, this feeling of home. Elena knew it couldn't last, but sitting in that sunny dining room, listening to Sophia's quiet laughter and watching Matteo's rare smiles, she let herself pretend it might, just for a little while. Just until tomorrow brought reality back. The next morning, Elena woke to the sound of rain against her window. She'd been at the mansion for 3 days now, and something resembling routine had started to form. Breakfast with Mrs. Donati, mornings in the garden with Sophia, afternoons helping in the kitchen or reading in the library. It felt dangerously normal. Elena dressed and went downstairs, expecting to find Sophia waiting in her usual spot by the kitchen door. Instead, she found Matteo pacing the foyer, his phone pressed to his ear. "I don't care what it takes," he was saying. "Find him." Elena hesitated at the bottom of the stairs, not wanting to intrude, but Matteo saw her and gestured for her to wait. 24 hours, he continued into the phone. "That's all I'm giving you. After that, I handle this myself." He ended the call and turned to Elena. His expression was grim. "What's wrong?" she asked. "Your husband disappeared yesterday, along with the money he owes." Elena's stomach dropped. "What does that mean?" "It means the people he borrowed from are angry, and when they're angry, they look for other ways to collect. Like me. Like you." Elena sank onto the bottom step. "How much longer do I have to stay here?" Matteo ran a hand through his hair. "I don't know. This complicates things." Before Elena could respond, Sophia appeared at the top of the stairs. She was still in her pajamas, her hair messy from sleep. When she saw Elena, she broke into a smile and ran down the steps. "Morning tea party?" Sophia whispered, tugging on Elena's hand. Elena looked at Matteo. "Is it safe for her to be outside?" "The grounds are secure, but—" He hesitated. "Elena, there's something else." The serious tone in his voice made Elena's chest tighten. "What?" "Sophia's been having nightmares again. Last night was bad." Elena looked down at the little girl, who was humming quietly to herself. "About the accident?" "About losing people she cares about." Matteo's meaning was clear. Elena felt guilt settle in her stomach like a stone. Sophia was getting attached to her, and Elena would eventually have to leave. The child had already lost her parents. Did she really need to lose someone else? "Maybe I should keep some distance," Elena said quietly. Sophia looked up at her with those enormous brown eyes. "Elena sad?" The whispered question broke Elena's heart. She knelt down to Sophia's level. "Not sad, sweetheart. Just thinking." Sophia studied her face, then reached out and touched Elena's cheek gently. "Stay," she whispered. Elena felt tears threaten. "Oh, Sophia!" "She doesn't understand temporary," Matteo said softly. "To her, people either stay or they leave forever." Elena looked between Sophia and Matteo, feeling trapped by their need and her own impossible situation. "Tea party," Sophia said again, more insistently this time. "Okay," Elena agreed, "but inside today because of the rain." Sophia clapped her hands and ran toward the living room, already making plans. Elena stood up slowly. "This is getting complicated. I know. She's going to be hurt when I leave. Maybe." Matteo watched Sophia setting up her toys in the next room. "Or maybe she'll be stronger for having known you." They spent the morning in the large living room, where Sophia had created an elaborate tea party setup. She served Elena and Matteo with serious concentration, then brought out her coloring books. Elena helped her color a picture of a house with a garden. Sophia carefully added 3 stick figures in the yard. "Who's this?" Elena pointed to the tallest figure. "Uncle Matteo." "And this one?" "Me." "And this one?" Sophia looked at Elena seriously. "Elena, my Elena." Something in Elena's chest cracked open. The possessive way Sophia said "my Elena" was innocent but devastating. "Sophia," Elena said gently, "you know I can't stay forever, right?" Sophia's crayon stopped moving. She looked up with confusion in her eyes. Sometimes people have to go away, Elena continued, hating every word, even when they don't want to. Sophia shook her head firmly. No, Elena stays. Sweetheart. Sophia threw down her crayon and ran from the room. Elena started to follow, but Matteo caught her arm. Let her go, she needs to process. Elena sank back onto the couch. I shouldn't have said anything. She needs to hear it. Better from you than from reality when you disappear one day. Elena flinched. That sounds harsh. It is harsh. Life is harsh. Matteo sat down beside her, but handling difficult truths is part of growing up. They sat in silence for a while, listening to the rain against the windows. Elena picked up Sophia's abandoned coloring book and looked at the half-finished house. The little girl had been careful to stay inside the lines, choosing colors that actually made sense. She's smart, Elena said. Very. Too smart sometimes. What do you mean? Matteo was quiet for a long moment. She understands more than she should about loss, about the world being dangerous, about people leaving and never coming back. Elena studied his profile. Is that why you do what you do? To protect her? Part of it. What's the other part? Matteo turned to look at her. You really want to know? Elena nodded. My father built this business on fear and violence. When I took over, I could have changed direction, gone legitimate. He gestured around the elegant room. Instead, I chose to be better at being dangerous. Why? Because legitimate doesn't protect the people you love. Money does, fear does, power does. Elena felt a chill run down her spine. And what about happiness? Matteo's smile was bitter. Happiness is a luxury I can't afford. Before Elena could respond, Mrs. Donati appeared in the doorway. Mr. Romano, you have visitors. Matteo's entire demeanor changed instantly. His body went alert, his expression hardened. Expected? No, sir. Matteo stood up. Take Elena to the safe room. What's happening? Elena asked. Probably nothing, but we don't take chances. He was already moving toward the foyer. Mrs. Donati, get Sophia too. Elena followed Mrs. Donati upstairs to a room she'd never seen before. It looked like a comfortable sitting area, but Elena noticed the heavy door, the lack of windows, the camera monitors showing different views of the house. Sophia was already there, curled up in a chair with her rabbit. She looked small and scared. Hey, sweetheart. Elena sat down next to her. Everything's okay. Sophia climbed into Elena's lap and buried her face against her shoulder. Through the monitors, Elena could see Matteo talking to two men in expensive suits. The conversation looked calm, professional even. But something about their body language made Elena nervous. Who are they? She asked Mrs. Donati. Business associates. Sometimes these meetings happen without warning. 20 minutes later, the men left. Mrs. Donati checked her phone and nodded. All clear. They went back downstairs to find Matteo in his office, staring out the window. His knuckles were scraped, Elena noticed. Everything okay? She asked. Fine. Just a misunderstanding. Elena didn't believe him, but she didn't push. Sophia ran to Matteo and hugged his legs. He picked her up automatically, his expression softening. Uncle okay? Sophia whispered. Uncle's fine, baby girl. Sophia touched his scraped knuckles gently. Hurt? Just a little scratch. Elena watched them together and felt something shift inside her chest. This was Matteo's real face, not the controlled businessman or the dangerous criminal, but the man who picked up scared children and let them tend his wounds. I'll get some ice for those knuckles, she said. In the kitchen, Elena wrapped ice cubes in a dish towel. When she came back, Matteo was sitting on the couch with Sophia in his lap, reading her a story. Elena handed him the ice pack. Their fingers brushed, and she felt a spark that had nothing to do with the cold. "Thank you," he said quietly. "What really happened out there?" Matteo glanced at Sophia, who was absorbed in the book. "Someone made a threat they shouldn't have made. About me, about my family." He looked directly at Elena as he said it. Elena felt her breath catch. Family? Did he mean her? Before she could ask, Sophia pointed to a picture in the book. "Like Elena," she said, showing them an illustration of a princess with dark hair. "Very much like Elena," Matteo agreed. Sophia beamed and continued reading. Elena sat down on the other end of the couch, hyper-aware of Matteo's presence. The way he held Sophia so carefully, the way his voice gentled when he read to her, the way he'd called her family. When Sophia fell asleep against his chest, Matteo carried her upstairs. Elena followed, not sure why. Sophia's room was painted soft pink with white furniture. Drawings covered one wall, mostly pictures of houses and families and gardens. Elena noticed several that included her. Matteo tucked Sophia into bed and kissed her forehead. "Sweet dreams, baby girl." Sophia stirred slightly. "Elena stay?" Elena looked at Matteo, who nodded. "I'll stay until you fall asleep," Elena promised. She sat in the chair beside Sophia's bed and hummed softly until the child's breathing evened out. When she was sure Sophia was sleeping, Elena stood to leave. Matteo was waiting in the hallway. "She's never asked anyone else to stay," he said quietly. "She's never needed anyone else to stay." They walked downstairs together. The house felt different at night, larger, quieter, full of shadows. "Elena?" Matteo stopped at the bottom of the stairs. "Yes?" "I meant what I said earlier, about family." Elena's heart sped up. "Matteo, I know this situation is temporary. I know you'll leave when it's safe, but while you're here..." He paused, seeming to struggle with the words. "You're not just a guest. Not anymore." Elena stared at him. "What am I then?" "Someone I want to protect. Someone who matters." The intensity in his voice made Elena's knees weak. "This is dangerous." "Everything worthwhile is dangerous." Elena felt herself leaning toward him, drawn by something she couldn't name. Matteo's eyes darkened, and for a moment she thought he might kiss her. Instead, he stepped back. "Good night, Elena." "Good night." Elena watched him disappear into his office, then went to her room with her heart pounding. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying his words. Someone who matters. When had anyone last said that to her? When had anyone last looked at her like she was precious instead of broken? Elena rolled over and pressed her face into the pillow. This was getting too complicated. She was falling for a man she couldn't have, in love with a child she'd have to leave, attached to a life that could never really be hers. But lying in that comfortable bed, safe and warm and wanted, Elena let herself imagine what it would be like if she could stay. What it would be like to wake up every morning to Sophia's whispered good morning and Matteo's rare smiles. What it would be like to belong somewhere again. Just for tonight, she let herself dream. Tomorrow would come soon enough, with all its complications and impossible choices. Tonight, she was home, even if it couldn't last forever. Elena woke to shouting outside her window. She bolted upright in bed, her heart racing. Through the glass, she could see men running across the lawn. Security lights blazed, turning night into harsh, artificial day. She threw on a robe and rushed into the hallway. Matteo was already there, fully dressed despite the early hour. His phone was pressed to his ear. "How many?" he was saying. "And you're sure they breached the perimeter?" Elena's blood turned cold. "What's happening?" Matteo held up a hand, finishing his call. 3 men cut through the fence on the east side. We caught them before they reached the house. Caught them? They're no longer a threat. Something in his tone told Elena not to ask for details. Where's Sophia? Safe. Mrs. Donati has her in the secure room. Elena started toward the stairs, but Matteo caught her arm. Where are you going? To check on Sophia. She's fine. My people are handling this. Elena pulled free. She's probably terrified. She needs you to stay safe. Matteo's voice was firm. These men came for you, Elena. If they'd gotten inside, if they'd found you. Elena felt sick. This is my fault. This is David's fault, and the fault of greedy men who think violence solves everything. More shouting from outside. Elena moved to the window, but Matteo blocked her view. Don't look. Why not? Because you don't need to see how this world works. Elena stared at him. Your world. Yes, my world. His jaw was tight. The world that's keeping you alive right now. Elena wanted to argue, but she knew he was right. She was safe because Matteo Romano was dangerous, because men feared him, because he could do things she didn't want to imagine. How long will this keep happening? Until we find your husband, until the debt is settled. And if you never find him, Matteo's expression darkened. We'll find him. A soft knock interrupted them. Mrs. Donati appeared, looking unusually shaken. The situation is contained, she said, but Sophia is asking for Elena. Elena followed Mrs. Donati downstairs to the safe room. Sophia sat curled in the corner, clutching her stuffed rabbit. When she saw Elena, she ran into her arms. Scared, Sophia whispered against Elena's neck. I know, sweetheart, but you're safe now. Bad men? Elena looked at Mrs. Donati, unsure how to answer. Sometimes bad men try to visit, Mrs. Donati said gently, but Uncle Matteo makes sure they can't stay. Sophia nodded solemnly. She understood more than a 7-year-old should about danger and protection. They stayed in the safe room until dawn. Sophia eventually fell asleep in Elena's lap, but Elena remained wide awake, listening to every sound. Every footstep in the hallway. Every creak of the old house settling. When Matteo finally came to get them, he looked exhausted. His shirt was different from the one he'd been wearing earlier. Clean. It's over, he said simply. Elena carried Sophia upstairs and tucked her into her own bed. The little girl didn't wake up, but her small hand gripped Elena's finger tightly. She won't let go, Elena murmured. Neither would I, Matteo said quietly. Elena looked up at him. He was standing in the doorway, watching them with an expression she couldn't read. Matteo? Thank you for keeping us safe. It's what I do. No. Elena carefully extracted her finger from Sophia's grip and stood up. You do a lot of things, but the way you protect the people you care about, that's different. Matteo was quiet for a long moment. My brother used to say that a man is only as good as what he's willing to fight for. What do you fight for? Her. He nodded towards Sophia. This house, the people inside it. And now? Matteo met her eyes. Now I fight for you too. The words hung between them like a promise and a threat all at once. Elena felt her heart speed up. I should get some sleep, she said. Elena? She stopped at the door. You can't keep blaming yourself for this. None of this is your fault. Isn't it? I married David. I ignored the signs that he was in trouble. You trusted someone you loved. That's not a crime. Elena felt tears prick her eyes. It feels like one. Matteo stepped closer. The only crime here is what he did to you, throwing you away when you needed him most. Elena looked up at him. In the dim light from the hallway, his face was all sharp angles and shadows, but his eyes were gentle. "Why do you care?" she whispered. "Because I know what it's like to lose everything. And I know what it's like to blame yourself for things you couldn't control. Your wife and brother? I should have been in that car. I was supposed to go with them to the store. At the last minute, I had a business call." His voice was rough. 5 minutes. If I'd finished that call 5 minutes sooner. Elena reached out without thinking and touched his hand. "It wasn't your fault either." "Wasn't it? My business, my enemies, my choice to keep doing what I do instead of going legitimate. You can't know that it would have made a difference." Matteo turned his hand palm up, capturing her fingers. "Can I?" They stood there in Sophia's doorway, holding hands in the darkness. Elena felt something shifting between them, something dangerous and inevitable. "This is complicated," she whispered. "Very. Sophia is already too attached to me." "So am I." Elena's breath caught. "Matteo, I know all the reasons this is a bad idea. I know you'll leave when it's safe. I know I live in a world that destroys good things." His thumb traced across her knuckles. "I know all of it." "Then why?" "Because for the first time in 2 years, I wake up looking forward to something. Because Sophia is healing. Because this house feels like a home instead of a fortress." Elena felt tears sliding down her cheeks. "You're making this so hard." "I'm not trying to make anything hard. I'm just trying to be honest." Elena pulled her hand free and stepped back. "I need space. I need to think." Matteo nodded. "Take all the time you need." Elena escaped to her room and closed the door, leaning against it. Her heart was pounding, her mind racing. She was falling in love with Matteo Romano, with his gentleness towards Sophia, with the way he protected without controlling, with the man beneath the reputation. And it was impossible. Even if she stayed, even if they tried to build something together, what kind of life could she have? Always looking over her shoulder, always worried about the next threat, always knowing that people wanted to hurt the man she loved. But lying in bed as the sun came up, Elena couldn't stop thinking about what he'd said. "So am I." He was attached to her, too. A man who didn't let anyone close, who'd built walls around his heart after losing everything. He was letting her in. Elena closed her eyes and tried to imagine a future. Any future. She couldn't go back to her old life. David had made sure of that. Even if the debt was settled, even if the danger passed, she couldn't return to being the woman who'd been thrown away like garbage. But could she build a new life here, in this strange world of luxury and violence? Could she love a man whose hands were sometimes stained with blood? Could she help raise a child who'd already lost too much? Elena rolled over and stared at the wall. 3 weeks ago, she'd been a waitress in a failing marriage. Now she was hiding in a crime boss's mansion, playing house with a traumatized child, falling for a man who could kill with his bare hands. Nothing about it made sense. Everything about it felt right. When Elena finally fell asleep, she dreamed of Sophia's laughter and Matteo's rare smiles. She dreamed of tea parties in the garden and quiet dinners by the fire. She dreamed of a life that seemed impossible, but felt more real than anything she'd ever known. She woke up to Sophia bouncing on her bed. Elena, wake up! Uncle Matteo made pancakes." Elena sat up, blinking in the afternoon sunlight. "Pancakes? With chocolate chips. Come see?" Sophia grabbed Elena's hand and pulled her downstairs to the kitchen, where Matteo stood at the stove flipping perfect golden pancakes. He wore jeans and a simple t-shirt instead of his usual suit. The casual clothes made him look younger, more approachable. "Good morning, sleepyhead," he said with a smile. It's afternoon, Elena pointed out. Then good afternoon. Sophia climbed onto a stool at the kitchen island, which was already set for 3. Elena noticed Matteo had made enough pancakes for a small army. Hungry? She asked. I don't cook often. When I do, I tend to overcompensate. Elena accepted a plate stacked high with pancakes and fresh fruit. They were perfect, light and fluffy with just the right amount of sweetness. These are amazing. Sophia nodded enthusiastically, syrup coating her chin. Uncle Matteo learned from Mama. Matteo's expression flickered with pain, but he managed a smile. Your mama was a much better cook than me. She taught you good, Sophia said seriously. They ate together in comfortable quiet, sunlight streaming through the kitchen windows. Elena found herself studying Matteo's face, looking for signs of the violence from the night before. But all she saw was a man making pancakes for his niece, content in the simple domesticity of a Sunday afternoon. Elena? Sophia tugged on her sleeve. Yes, sweetheart? Can we plant flowers today? In the garden? Elena looked at Matteo. Is it safe? The grounds are secure, and you both could use some fresh air after last night. An hour later, Elena found herself kneeling in a flower bed with Sophia, both of them covered in dirt. Mrs. Donati had provided them with seeds, tools, and patient instruction. Flowers need love, Sophia explained seriously as she patted soil around a newly planted seed. And water and sunshine. Just like people, Elena agreed. Sophia nodded. Mama said that too. Elena glanced up to see Matteo watching them from the terrace. He was back in a suit, phone in hand, but his attention was focused entirely on them. Sophia, can I ask you something? Uh-huh. Are you happy here, with Uncle Matteo? Sophia considered this carefully. Uncle Matteo loves me very much, but he's sad sometimes. Sad about your mama and papa? Uh-huh, and sad because he's lonely. Elena's chest tightened. Lonely? Before you came, Uncle Matteo ate dinner by himself, and he never smiled. Sophia looked up at Elena with those enormous eyes. Now he smiles at you. Elena felt tears threaten. Sophia, I don't want you to go away like Mama and Papa. The whispered confession broke Elena's heart. Oh, sweetheart. Promise you won't go away? Elena looked at the little girl's hopeful face and felt something crack open inside her chest. How could she promise something like that? How could she explain that the adult world was complicated, that staying might not be possible? But looking at Sophia's trusting eyes, Elena heard herself say, I promise I'll try my hardest to stay. Sophia beamed and threw her arms around Elena's neck, getting dirt all over both of them. I love you, Elena, Sophia whispered. Elena closed her eyes and held the little girl tight. I love you too, sweetheart. And she did. Completely. Irrevocably. Whatever that meant for the future, Elena could worry about later. For now, it was enough to be loved in return.